Howdy doody. Welcome everybody. Hello chat. Oh, howdy Bob, just dropping in. Another guy, Kimberly, Tyler. Welcome back everybody. Songbird. Who are you, Songbird? You seem to be a new member. Good times, good times. We're back everyone. Yes. I was gonna say, Songbird, are you Dylan? Are you Dylan's new new mask? Well, nonetheless, we finally made it, everyone. We officially, technically, we finished Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, and we're just on the final chapter now. The final chapter is more like the epilogue. The epilogue. We did it, we made it. It was a long journey, but we're back. It's a long journey, but we've made it, I should say. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's cruise, let's go leisurely. We don't need to like power through anymore. We can just leisurely let Gurdjieff speak to us now. Not through any characters, but just direct. Hopefully this is not going to be as absolutely like... If anyone's tried to read the introduction, you know what I mean. Like, hopefully he doesn't dog us like he did in the introduction. So, epilogue from the author. Chapter 48. Beelzebub's Tales. All and everything. After 6 years of work, merciless towards myself, and with almost continuously tense mentation. So he'd be concentrating. I yesterday, at last, completed the setting down on paper, in a form I think is accessible to everybody. Doubt. Accessible to everybody. You think it's accessible? I think you think it's the exact opposite of that, but nonetheless. Reading leisurely, exactly. Myra Tangent Barrage, exactly. Another guy. Let's go. Let's get these tangents going. The first of the 3 series of books, which... Does he mean, like, you know, how Beelzebub's tale sometimes comes in, like, a 3 set? Does he mean that, or does he mean... Is he including... I guess he's not including Meetings of Remarkable Men and Life is Only Real When I Am in this. The first of the 3 series of books I had previously thought out and 6 years ago begun. So maybe he means that trilogy. Just those 3 series in which I planned to actualize, or maybe he means the All and Everything series, by means of the totality of the ideas to be developed at first in theory and afterwards in practice. Howdy Petro. And also by a means I had foreseen and prepared 3 essential tasks I had to set myself. That's interesting, because it's interesting, it's like, yeah, no, don't worry Petro, we're not going to go that fast. There's just leisurely pace. It's interesting if you think about it, like, everything in the work is actualized via the law of 3. So you need 2 forces to smash against each other. You need the struggle. And that friction creates a spark, but there needs to be a reconciling force. And it's interesting that he's got 3 books. The first one is this massive All and Everything, which is a trinity in and of itself, which has everything in it. But then he's got this completely different book, Meetings with Remarkable Men, which is a biography, and it's also completely different prose, because it reads like a novel. And then he's got Life is Real When I Am, which is this unfinished work. And so it's like... It's interesting. Interesting. 3 essential tasks I had set myself, namely, and so he's setting himself 3 essential tasks, by means of the first series, to destroy in people everything which in their false representations, as it were, exists in reality, or in other words, to corrode without mercy all the rubbish accumulated during the ages in human mentation. So this is, I guess, you know, in the first part of Beelzebub's Tales, he really goes through the history. So that's interesting. His idea of going through history is to get rid of, it's a cleansing, to get rid of all the dross. By means of the second series, to prepare, so to say, new constructional material, and by means of the third, to build a new world. Very interesting. This is very similar to what Heidegger says about philosophy, and Giorgiani says the same thing. It's like, there's a world of new philosophy, like philosophy is from Plato to Kant or Plato to Nietzsche, and then philosophy kind of ends. And it's like, there needs to be a new world. Because people are now just spinning around in circles. It's like, what is philosophy now? If you're in a part of the analytical school, it's just about logic chopping. And if you're part of the continental school, it's, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They're being weird. And so Heidegger's like, there needs to be a new world, a new philosophy. A philosophy of the future, if you will. And it's like, for that to happen, what does there need to be? Well, to build a new civilization, you need to find new land. So there needs to be this people going out and clearing, making a clearing. So you need that dissolving, the corroding. And then there needs to be, the next round of people needs to be this people who then build foundations. And then there's finally the settlers who come in the third wave. And so it's like these three waves of, to create something truly new, you need to get rid of the old, prepare the foundations, and then get to it, baby. Get to the work. Is this the new AI landscape? What do you think? Nah. AI is just a tool, bruh. It's just a tool, bro. We'll see what's going on. We'll see what's going on with that. Having now finished the first series of books, and following the practice already long ago established on the earth, never to conclude any great, as it is said, undertaking without what some call an epilogue, others an afterword, and still others from the author. Okay, epilogues afterwards, but he thinks from the author is best. A tool for some, a reality for others. That's interesting. Yeah. From the author, and so on. I also now propose to write something of the same kind for them. With this end in view, I very attentively read over this morning the preface I wrote 6 years ago, entitled The Arousing of Thought. I love arousing thoughts. In order to take corresponding ideas from it for a corresponding, so to say, logical fusion of that beginning with this conclusion, which I now intend to write. While I was reading the first chapter, which I wrote only 6 years ago, but which seems to me, by my present sensing, to have been written long, long ago. It's pretty crazy, because that first chapter, it's like, I mean, in the beginning, no one was here. It was just me reading by myself, yelling into the void. It's like that chapter, the first chapter I made was probably like a year ago now. So for Gurdjieff, it's like a 6-year gap, but for us, it's like a year gap. There's so much time in between. A sensing, which is now in my common presence, obviously, because during that time I had to think intensely, and even, as might be said, to experience all the suitable material required for 8 thick volumes. Need some thick volumes. Not for nothing is it stated in the branch of genuine science entitled The Laws of Association of Human Mentation, which has come down from very ancient times and is known to only a few contemporary people. Yeah, what is it? Songbird in the chat. Baptize your staff of creation with a ritual cleansing chamber. That was like a whole bunch of chapters in Beelzebub's Tales where he just talks about like gypsies washing their junk. That was so crazy. That the sensing of the flow of time is directly proportional to the quality and quantity of the flow of thoughts. This is interesting. Do you think Gurdjieff read Proust? Do you think Gurdjieff read Henri Bergson? The law of association of human mentation. It's almost like he's talking about, Cherivicking. $5 equals 0.38% per page. Thank you, Cherivicking. Thank you. Hey, Kimberly. Thank you for the 5. We've begun our journey to the stretch goal, guys. Japanese toilet episode of South Park. Never saw it. Never saw it. The Lord. So, interesting stuff here. Sensing the flow of time is directly proportional to the quality and quantity of the flow of thoughts. That is so interesting. Time and eternity, our perception of time and the flow of thoughts itself are all interlinked. There's a big PP clue right here. There's a big PP clue right there. I can feel it throbbing in the back of my consciousness. Well then, while I was reading just that first chapter, about which, as I said, I thought deeply from every aspect, and which I experienced under the most exclusive action of my own willed self-mortification, and which moreover I wrote at a time when the functioning of my entire whole, a functioning which engenders in man what is called the power to manifest by his own initiative, was utterly disharmonized. That's interesting. So it's like he's saying, this is the equivalent of like you go back and read your like journal when you're a teenager and be like, ugh, cringe. He's basically saying that when he went back and read the like first chapter, he's like, ugh, my being was in such disharmony when I wrote that. Sucks. That is to say, when I was still extremely ill owing to an accident that had not long before occurred to me, and which consisted of a charge and crash. So this is his car crash, first one, with my automobile at full speed into a tree standing silently, like an observer and reckoner of the passage of centuries at a disorderly tempo, on the historic road between the world capital of Paris and the town of Fontainebleau, a charge which, according to any sane human understanding, should have put an end to my life. There arose in me from the reading of that chapter a quite definite decision. It's very interesting. Like, I feel like Gurdjieff and Evola would have really gotten along if they met. Like, Evola just walking around the like streets in Austria while it was being bombed, and Gurdjieff just driving at high speeds towards trees. It's like they had this like being towards death and danger, both of them. Another guy asks, is the flow of thoughts shared between everyone? So this is an individual, I mean, I'm sure there's some universal mind stuff behind everything, but what he's talking about is the individual experience of the flow of thoughts says something about you. Or rather than... Yes. Pardon me. Oof. Burping. Recalling my state during the period of writing of the first chapter, I cannot help adding here. Gurgy-burgy, hello Neo-Stoicism. Owing to still another certain small weakness in me, which consists of my always experiencing an inner satisfaction whenever I see appear on the faces of our estimable contemporary, as they are called, representatives of exact science. The trust the science types, that very specific smile peculiar to them alone, that although my body after the accident was, as is said, so battered and everything in it so mixed up, that for months it looks like a fragment of a general picture which might be described as a bit of live meat in a clean bed, nevertheless, and for all that my correctly disciplined what is usually called spirit, even in the physical state of my body, was not in the least depressed. Okay, no depression after accident, as it should have been according to their notions, but on the contrary, its power was even intensified by the heightened excitation which had arisen in it just before the accident, owing to my repeated disappointment in people, particularly in such people as are devoted, as they say, to science. In inverted commas. If this was the modern day, he would say the science. Yeah, the science. And also to my disappointment in those ideals which until then had been in me, in which had gradually been formed in my common presence, thanks chiefly to the commandment inculcated in me in my childhood, enjoining the highest aim and sense of human life is the striving to attain the welfare of one's neighbor. And that this is possible exclusively only by the conscious renunciation of one's own. Huh, so only by renouncing your own welfare can your neighbor be good. And so after I had very attentively read over that opening chapter of the first series, which I had written in the said conditions, and when my memory, by association, there had been recalled. So it's an Ouroboros. His memory created this book, and he's going back to the first chapter. And as he goes back to the first chapter, via association, he's recalling something. And thereby recalled the texts of those many succeeding chapters, which according to my conviction ought to produce in the consciousness of the readers unusual impressions, which in turn always is said engender substantial results. Or rather this time, that dominant something in my common presence, which now represents the sum of the results obtained from the data crystallized during my life. Data which engender, among other things, in a man who has in general set himself the aim, so to say, to mentate actively impartially, to objectively calculate. During the process of responsible existence, the ability to penetrate and understand the psyche of people of various types, I decided urged by the impulse called love of kind, which simultaneously arose in me, not to write in this conclusion anything additional, and correspond to the general aim of this first series, but to confine myself simply to appending the first of a considerable number of lectures. Okay. Copies of which now are in my possession, and which are publicly read during the existence of the institution I had founded under the name of the Institute of Harmonious Development of Man. You know, like in the introduction, how he's like, should I write this book in English? And he's like debating on what language to write it in, and it's just like, and you know what language it's going to be in because you're reading it, and you just kind of like, I feel like there's something. I feel like he's going to just dog us here as well. Yeah, at least he's up front, but is he? Is he? Bruh. But okay. So he's claiming that he's not going to say anything new. So is it pointless? Is this live stream pointless? But then he's like, I'm going to add in some lectures. Okay. I feel like also like reading this book has prepared us in a way, and now it's like we understand how he talks now. So this is easier to read than a normal chapter would be. That institution, by the way, no longer exists. And so this is another thing. This is another interesting thing. Beelzebub started an institute and he had a certain trajectory, but after his crash, he changed it. Because there's this whole thing about lineage, and I've heard a lot of people in the Fourth Way, or I've met people who've been like, oh yeah, and there's an Ouspensky chapter in Search of the Miraculous, which I think is very important. I think it's chapter 27. It's the one where he talks about influences, A, B, and C. And that's like the meat of the book. One of the hearts of the book in Search of the Miraculous is that chapter where he talks about A, B, and C influences, and how A influences are influence of the world, and C influences are direct influences, objective. Like, you know, you pierce into the universe itself and you see something in the internal worlds. That's a C influence. Like spiritual masters, you know, Jesus, Lao Tzu, Buddha, they had direct C influences, direct access to C influences. And a B influence is just a C influence that's secondary. So the Bible is a B influence. The Tao Te Ching is a B influence. But this chapter is interesting because he talks about influences, and in Search of the Miraculous, Ouspensky talks about this, and he talks about this buildup of influences inside you and how it creates a magnetic center of gravity. And Ouspensky talks about this concept, and he expounds it in his kind of doctrine of this creation of a center inside yourself, this magnetic center, a core, which then, you know, becomes the deputy steward, and then the steward makes way for the master to arrive. And he has this whole concept, and it's like, I think it's a really good concept for especially new people to kind of not necessarily systematize the work, but a hierarchical structure and like kind of thinking about it in that way can really help you kind of begin and kind of measure yourself and what's correct and what's not correct, or what's working and what's not working. But a lot of people fall into this and they read that chapter and they're like, yeah, because he talks about lineage and how man number 5 to really progress needs to bend back and help someone to reach man number 5 so that they can go to man number 6, and there's this lineage. And you can't progress unless you get a man of a higher level to pull you up to their rung of the ladder. So it's like a negation of self-initiation kind of thing. But there's, and you know, he talks about this in Beelzebub's Tales. He talks about this in a couple of chapters, but he then negates it by saying, you know, there are these schools where they connect, the students connect themselves to the master's, you know, what is it called? Kesjan body, the astral body. If you can connect to the master's astral body, you don't need a physical world master per se. If you connect to the lineage, you know, the golden thread of the, or the silver cord of the astral body, of the master's astral body, can kind of connect to you and speak to you in your, well, he doesn't say it speaks to you in your dreams, but that's kind of the concept that comes from other systems. And so it's this thing of, you know, the golden chain, or the chain of the tradition, is the thread that runs through the astral bodies from master to master to master to master. So where am I going with this? Gurdjieff originally taught people, and in the fourth way, in the work, a lot of people are really anal about lineages. Like, who taught you the work? Who taught you the work? Where's your lineage, bruh? And the lineage bros are some of, you know, the most unworked on, or in many cases, they just, you know, where do the lineages go? Where are they? What are they doing now? Are they really, you know, any good? And this isn't just a knock on the fourth way school, this is a knock on everything. Like, you know, Jungian schools, Steiner schools, what have they got really? The creation of Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, what does that title say? He's talking not to his son. Who's Beelzebub talking to? Beelzebub isn't talking to his son. He's talking to his grandson. Who's Beelzebub? Beelzebub is Gurdjieff. So Gurdjieff isn't talking to his direct students. Gurdjieff had a car crash, and then he's like, I'm in a dire situation, and then he looks at his institute and is like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. I need to do something. He's shifting gear, he's changing gear, and he's like, this doesn't exist anymore. This is one, not a conspiracy, this is an idea that now the later kind of movements have. Because there's two kind of fourth way groups. There's the fourth way group where everyone comes together and they just self-remember and they don't do much. And you just got to not be intellectual and just be in the moment. And then there's the other group, which is just like ultra autistic about reading Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, and that's the core text, and you don't need to do anything else. And you're reading something else that's not Gurdjieff, cringe. And both of them kind of fail in a way, but I almost feel like the people who focus more on the Beelzebub's tales to his grandson are more correct. Because what this book is, this book underneath me, Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, all and everything, I see it as, it's a device, it's a piece of objective art, but it's also something Gurdjieff created as a fail-safe for his own system. So if everything's lost except for this book, you can kind of recover it. And it's not just that, it's this, he's embedded something in it. You know, he says himself, he did like a little psychology, he was a hypnotherapist. It has an effect on your subconsciousness. Reading this book has an effect on your consciousness. And it's like reading this book is an initiation in a sort of way. If you manage to get through it and digest even just a part of it, if you're able to digest it, it, you know, connects you in a certain way, and it kind of fills in the octave that's missing if you don't have an actual man number 5 standing in front of you teaching you. So I kind of get it in a certain way. I highly approve of this book. But yeah, sorry, I just saw this and I just wanted to mention that. Tangent over. Let's keep going, guys. Let's keep going. The Institute, by the way, no longer exists. And I find it both necessary and opportune, chiefly for the purpose of pacifying certain types from various countries. And you know, just to go back on that tangent, initiation isn't easy. It was never easy. People nowadays, you do one ayahuasca spiritual drumming circle at a cacao ceremony and you're initiated. And it's like, look, in ancient Atlantis, who achieved initiation? You know, in ancient Atlantis, even in like cultures like in ancient Egypt, they had institutions geared towards initiation. Culture itself was geared towards initiation. And even then, initiation was still something exceptional. Nowadays, there are no institutions of initiation. The culture is geared against it. Culture is geared towards desires, compulsions, everything that pulls you away from initiation. So in an ancient time where you had culture and institutions geared towards initiation, and it was still something exceptional, nowadays, it's like, it's almost like the task of initiation is like, whoa, it's like even greater. It's even a larger struggle, and yet people are like, yeah, man, initiation. Self-initiation, just come to my cacao ceremony and we can go on an ayahuasca journey and boom, you'll be initiated. Initiation ain't easy, but it's not impossible. And you gotta grab the fragments of the unknown teachings, the fragments of the system left behind. This book contains a lot of fragments, and by digesting them, it moves us closer. It moves us a step, even if it's just a toe, onto that path of initiation. And if we don't see, and you gotta have that attitude of, I do or I die. You can't have the attitude of just like, you know, I'm just going to be a good person, and then in a billion, magillion lifetimes when I'll finally reincarnate as a Buddha in its perfect circumstances or something. It's like, no. You got to have the attitude that it's like, if I, like, this is my last life. If I fail, I fail, but you know what? I'm going to die with my shoes on, and I'm going to try anyway, and even if I fail, I'll let my body, my corpse, become like a bridge that someone behind me can walk over and just get that little bit further. Who cares? I'm going to do it for the sake of the work, the love of the work. That's the attitude you got to have. That's the attitude you got to have. Wesley Sullivan says, totally agree, this book can put you on the path. 100%. 100%. And it's like, once again, it's not just reading, and I'm not just saying it's like being intellectual and reading books gets you on the path. It's like, no. And that's the point of this book. It's like, it's difficult to read because it forces you to not just read it mechanically. You have to digest it. There's a way to kind of read sacred scripture in a mechanical way, or you can read a sacred scripture in a certain way and digest it, and that actually enriches you. This book is that. And right at the end, we learn the difference between, what is it? Reason, understanding, and reason, no, what is it? Being, understanding, and being reason? No, reason, knowledge, and reason, understanding, that was it. And reason, understanding, that was just so good, that chapter. I'm going to remember that forever. Oh, that's a part of me now. But yeah. So, institution destroyed. I find it both necessary and opportune, chiefly for the purpose of pacifying certain types from various countries. Yeah, and this is the thing, if you're a teacher, an international teacher, I'm not an international, well actually, anyway, I'm not an international teacher, let's say that, but a lot of people who've taught internationally talk about the personalities in different countries. Germans just have a specific way of teaching and speaking. And if you start a class or a group in Germany, the way you teach and what you teach, if you did the exact same thing in the exact same style in like Mexico or South America, it just would not work. Just, you gotta, there are certain types and ways of doing things, and so this is basically Gurdjieff talking about this concept. They're pacifying certain types from certain countries. You are, yeah. I'm international, and I'm kind of. To make the categorical declaration here and now that I have liquidated it completely and forever. So anyone who says, yeah, I'm a part of Gurdjieff's original school, you can quote this part of Beelzebub's tales and just be like, actually, and you can just Uno reverse card them. So we're a part of Gurdjieff's real lineage, because Gurdjieff is speaking to us. We're not his children, we're his grandchildren. We're the ones who really matter. I was constrained with an inexpressible impulse of grief and despondency to make this decision to liquidate this institution and everything organized and carefully prepared for the opening the following year of 18 sections in different countries, in short, of everything I had previously created with almost superhuman labor, chiefly because soon after the said accident occurred, that is, 3 months afterwards, when the former usual functioning of my mentation had been more or less re-established in me, I being still utterly powerless in body, I then reflected that the attempt to preserve the existence of this institution would, in the absence of real people around me, and owing to the impossibility of procuring without me the great material means required for it, inevitably lead to a catastrophe, the result of which, among other things, for me in my old age, as well as for numerous others wholly dependent on me, would be, so to say, a vegetation. So basically, you know what was gonna happen? Yeah, we're his favored grandsons. You know what? And so what he's saying here is exactly what happened in Beelzebub's tales. You know how Beelzebub talked about institutions and how they arise, and then immediately the next generation just mess it all up, and the intent and Hasnamusens, appear and just ruin everything. It's like basically Gurdjieff was like, I was going to go international, 18 different countries, and then after his crash, he looked around and realized none of his students had crystallized anything real. So after he died, there wasn't going to be anything real. It was just going to dissolve, and there'd be an institution there, but it would be a shell, and Hasnamusens would just come and mess everything up. And so he's like, it would be a catastrophe. How about instead of doing that, I dissolve the institution and then focus on this fail-safe that will, at least it will preserve something in the future. It may not hit the generation, but maybe the next generation after will have a chance at crystallizing something real. So that, 100% beautiful. The lecture which I proposed to append as a conclusion to this first series was more than once read by my, as they were then called, pupils of the first rank. What does he mean by real people? Real people as in people who have, causal bodies. I mean, that's what I would say from the definition of development that he, talks about throughout his work. I think he just kind of looked down on the people who basically he trained. I mean, and it's hard because it's like, what? Ouspensky died actually before Gurdjieff, so it's kind of like, you dissing Ouspensky, bro? Ouspensky had something real. For real. Yeah. And so I would say, for me, from what I've read, definitely Ouspensky had something real. And I would even say Rodney Collins, even though Rodney Collins is a bit of a space cadet, I would say Rodney Collins had something. If not causal bodies and objective reason, those guys at least had some astral bodies stuff going. Like Ouspensky, Rodney Collins, Maurice Nicole. And I would say via the stories you hear, at least Fritz Peters, and even Orage must have had something. But I'm somewhat dubious of Madame de Salzman, and I'm somewhat dubious of J.G. Bennett. And I know a lot of people really like them, and they're the kind of people who really carried forward a lot of the... I think J.G. Bennett carried the Gurdjieff groups on the continent of Europe forward, and Ouspensky had groups in kind of Britain, and Orage was the New York group. And so, once again, I'm kind of light on it. A lot of people know the lineages way better than I do, and the kind of group after Gurdjieff died, who was where and what kind of continued forward. But from my understanding, J.G. Bennett didn't do jack. He just kind of met Idries Shah, kind of became half a Sufi, and then went into Subud, which is just trash, bruh. No offense to Subud people. Subud people is a kindergarten school, and the fact that J.G. Bennett got something from Subud says more about J.G. Bennett than it does about, the work. How do you reach the conclusion that they have some form of development, the type of content and vision they share in their works? Look, you gotta have a little bit of faith in something. You gotta have no, maybe faith is the wrong word. You gotta have trust somewhere. You have to make a leap somewhere. But to the degree of I've read a bunch of Ouspensky, and so I have a lot of respect for him. And he had understanding, and it's like the other thing is, yeah, he had idiosyncrasies about the work, but it's like Ouspensky is the kind of guy who, even if he never met Gurdjieff, he would have become a big name in the esoteric world anyway. Like, you read the stuff he wrote before Gurdjieff, like Tertium Organum and his book on the Tarot as well. It's like, this guy, he was a genius. He was a genius that happened to be absorbed into the Fourth Way, and it's like good for the Fourth Way. But it's a lot of the other stuff is more also kind of stories, and it's kind of more legend. I mean, Maurice Nicole was Jung's kind of disciple, and if Maurice Nicole never, this is the other thing that got super lucky. If Maurice Nicole never, sat in a lecture with Ouspensky, or never sat in a Fourth Way lecture, he would have just been a Jungian. He would have, after Jung died, Maurice Nicole was going to move the Jungian, the groups forward. He was the kind of the next figurehead, but he joined the fourth way school, and Jung didn't have a student after that, and was like, and it just all kind of dissolved for Jung. And it's interesting, Maurice Nicole, you know, he has this concept of the new man. There's this thing about, like, where does the work end? So this is my own speculation. Man number 7. So man number 5 has an astral body. Man number 6 has a mental body, or at the very least has the higher intellectual cylinder as well as the higher emotional cylinder. And then man number 5 astral body, man number 6 mental body, and then man number 7 has a causal body, right? And objective being reason. Someone asks Gurdjieff what's beyond that, and he says, yeah, there is technically something beyond that, but you can't worry about, you know, step 72 while you're still at step 1. What's beyond man number 7? I would say Christ. Jesus is. And Maurice Nicole, he was obsessed with the fourth way, and then, you know, he wrote some books. His books like The Mark and The New Man, it's all kind of biblical, and it kind of goes back to his Christian roots. And you see that same thing with Ouspensky. Ouspensky in his final years is like, get rid of the work. The work doesn't work. It's useless. And there's this famous thing about Ouspensky in his final kind of things. He dissolves his own groups, just like Gurdjieff did. And everyone was like, well, what do we do now? And they kept on pressing him like, well, yeah, but what do we do? You can't just leave us. You can't just leave us hanging, bro. And they finally got it out. Ouspensky said, if you do want to continue the work, follow it to its roots in Mount Athos. That's an interesting, you know, a lot of people diss Ouspensky in his later years and say he just went crazy in his later years. That one line of Ouspensky, you know, follow the work to its roots in Mount Athos, that's interesting. Rodney Cullen became a devout Catholic at the end of it. I believe Rodney Cullen died like of a heart attack randomly in a church as well. And so, yeah, Rodney Collins is Ouspensky's greatest student then. So it's like these guys had something going. They saw something far ahead. It's kind of like, I feel like they were done with the rung of the ladder that we're all obsessed with, and they went on to the next thing. And that shows a level of development. Agreed. Intellectual genius, according to Casey. Reading Ouspensky was some form of an initiate in it. Oh, okay, so Edgar Casey said Ouspensky was some form of initiate in Atlantis in a past life. Okay, cool. I believe it. And it's like super duper, like, I kind of see something there. I haven't read much of Araj, but from what I've heard good things about Araj, and even though he's a little bit wacky himself from stories, it seems like he had something. The things I have most dubious regards is like de Salzman, Madame de Salzman, and J.G. Bennett are the more dubious ones, but even people like Fritz Peters, I would say Fritz Peters had got to have crystallized something. The only thing with Fritz Peters is he wrote like My Boyhood with Gurdjieff and then never wrote anything else again, and only rarely ever taught or lectured or, you know, met another Gurdjieff group after Gurdjieff died. Like, there's this whole thing with Fritz Peters. He was the youngest, like a 14-year-old kid who just randomly found his way into a Gurdjieff group. And, like, apparently, I'm not sure if there's, like, a story if it was on Gurdjieff's deathbed or the last time they were meeting for whatever reason. Gurdjieff basically looked at Fritz and said, sorry, but I've ruined you. And the implication is, you know, he's kind of gotten such high-level teachings or such development, Fritz had, that no group would ever have been able to kind of keep him. Like, imagine, like, in martial arts, imagine you meet a secret master who teaches you something crazy, and you kind of have the level of a 5th Dan black belt, and then you go back into the world, or back into, like, your country, and you look for, like, karate groups around you, and the only groups around you are either kids' karate groups or groups where the highest ranking member is only brown belt, and all of the masters are actually overseas. It's something like that for Fritz Peters. It's like, there was no group where he could have fit after that. It's like, and Gurdjieff's like, I'm sorry, boy, I've ruined you. And it's like, no, not spoiled or rotten. It's like, I've ruined you in the sense that I've gotten you up to a certain level, and now there's no one else kind of around who can kind of be with you to create something. Anyway, we've gone off like on a massive, sorry, another guy. I hope I kind of answered your question. So that's my speculation. A lot of that is like my conclusions. It's my speculation on who I think out of Gurdjieff's teachings kind of made it, which is why, like, you know, if you want to do the fourth way work, I'd say Gurdjieff and Ouspensky are the core texts. A lot of people don't like Ouspensky because it's too idiosyncratic, but I think Ouspensky is by far the best intro. So read Ouspensky and read other fourth way books, read other books. But everything you do will be reading around something. There's a big hole that's missing, and that hole is Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. Once you've read Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, then there's something there that it's like that fills in the gaps of everything that's missing. And then it flips. This is then the core thing, this understanding that builds in you by reading Beelzebub's Tales. After that, everything else is more like mortar. Like, it's like you've got the bricks now, and now you just need to build something. And anything else you read after that, everything else you read after that is just like mortar to help you solidify the bricks to build up what you got. Wesley, I enjoy the rants. Thank you, Wesley. Fourth Way by Ouspensky is great. You know, I actually didn't like that. The book Fourth Way by Ouspensky is a collection of lectures he did. And, you know, it is good. It is good. But I find that, like, it's about like 2/3 of the way through of the Fourth Way by Ouspensky. All of the lectures he becomes autistic about recurrences, and it just becomes dry. It's so dry, and I just can't. It's so hard. Another guy asks, even Thelema? If you want to. Thelema's just... it's kindergarten stuff, bro. It's kindergarten stuff. Like, I would rather read Dion Fortune and her takes than read Crowley. It's dense, but it's connected a lot for you. Good, exactly. Exactly. And that is good, because it's like, the good thing about the Fourth Way book, which is a bunch of lectures by Ouspensky's compiled, is because they're lectures, you have this dialogue between him and the audience. So Ouspensky will say some stuff, and then an audience member will be like, but I have a question. And sometimes it's like the question that you have in your mind while you're reading, you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? And then someone in the audience will ask the question, and you get clarification. And so it does fill in the gaps, but yeah. So it's a good book, but like, In Search of the Miraculous and the Man's Possible Psychological Evolution, whatever that really small book is, those are my favorite Ouspensky books on the Fourth Way one. Is like, yeah, it's also good, but if you can't read, if you pick up that book and you find it a hard read, please don't avoid Ouspensky because of that. In Search of the Miraculous and the small one, they're the two gold standard, the two best intro books for the Fourth Way, and that should be gospel. If you have gospels, it's like Gurdjieff's, like, you know, Views from the Real World, which is a compilation of lectures of Gurdjieff, and then, you know, Beelzebub's Tales and Meanings of Remarkable Men and Life is Only Real When I Am. It's like the books that Gurdjieff wrote and that compilation of lectures, Views from the Real World. Then Ouspensky's works, that's the Gospels, and then around that is everything else. You know, Rodney Collins, Maurice Nicole, modern kind of intro books, you know, Bennett, Salzman, Moraviev. What are some good ones? I mean, you know, there's some good stuff like High Being Bodies by Oak de Bois. It's a great book. It's great. It's another Fourth Way book. It's great. But it's like, yeah, it's everything after Ouspensky for foundation, and then you read Beelzebub's Tales. Everything after that is just mortar. You've got the building blocks. Everything else, even in other systems that you read, it's all just mortar that then helps you kind of connect and build up what you got, crystallize something for real. Now, let's get back to this little reading here. The lecture which I propose. So, pupils of the first rank. So he's talking about his pupils of the first rank during the existence of the mentioned institution. Certain of them, by the way, turned out subsequently, to my personal sincere regret, to have in their essence a predisposition to the speedy transformation of their psyche into the psyche called Hasnamusen. So this is Gurdjieff claiming his own students became Hasnamusian, which is interesting, very interesting. And it's hard because it's like, if they have a predisposition, like, what do you do if you're a teacher? If you're a teacher, It's like, this is the whole kung fu movie thing of like, you've got two students and there's one student you really like, but you can see the evil inside him, so you deny him the secret teachings, and then he resents you, and then it like happens anyway, and he kills you and takes the like manuals, and then your like other student who you ignored has to like seek vengeance. Oh god, I love Shanghai cinema. Now, a predisposition which appeared and became fully visible and clearly sensible to all more or less normal persons around them. And this is like something I see in like a lot of just schools, is there's the master, and then there's this kind of person that grows up in the school, and they're like obsessed with a person, but there's a flip that happens sometimes after, where it's like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. A really good example of this is, has everyone seen like that John Chang video of the like Qigong master that burns stuff with his hands? John Chang. It's like this guy, right? Everyone's seen this video. His student, what was it? Did that come up as Stuart Miller? Ooh, that book come up? Yeah, this Jim McMillan. His first Western student, if you ever read this book, this guy is a Hasnamusen. This guy, this book is also shit, by the way. It's like, just like him talking about meeting the like Qigong master, and he meets him and he's really thankful and he's like, ah, yes. But then all throughout the book, it's basically him being like, all the other students were shit except for me. But then like, he'll be like, my master, oh, yeah, and because he's a Christian as well, and he has this thing, it's like, my master, you know, oh, he's fallen, blah, blah, blah. And then the next chapter, he'll be like, oh, my master was brilliant, teaching me these amazing Mopai secrets. And then he'll just be like, in the next bit, he'll be like, but he fell and he lost his way. And it's like, you read this guy and he's just oscillating. And it's like, I don't know what to describe this, like, how to describe this, but I see this happen. This isn't just an isolated incident. This way of thinking happens continuously. Someone will read like Steiner and get really into it, but then they'll be like, but Steiner got lost at a certain point and I have the correct teachings. Or Ouspensky, you know, he's too idiosyncratic, but I have the right teachings. And it's like this weird thing happens. And it's like, I feel like I know what Gurdjieff is talking. Oh God, I'm doing it. I feel like I know what Gurdjieff is talking about here. There's this weird kind of thing where someone like arises in a spiritual teaching, but then it's like they'll then negate the teacher and be like, I know what's happening. I know what the thing is. Ignore the doctrine. Yeah, it's so meta. It's so freaking meta. And it's like, you got to be careful. I got to be careful that I'm not doing. But it's like, I don't know. This other. The thing that reinforces it, I should say, is the students themselves being like, yes, you are correct. And then they say that, the students say, yes, that's correct. And that reinforces it and crystallizes it inside themselves. And they kind of get a certainty that their own teacher is wrong and they're correct. And it just kind of, you know what I'll call it? There's a Hasnamusian certainty that you have to be wary of. And I got to be wary of in myself. But there's that certain people have that come out of systems. There's like, it's the person who's convinced, they have become persuaded. They've become convinced and they persuade other people that they're correct. And it's this weird thing of like, no. Everyone else is wrong but me. It's like, you don't need to read anything else. It's just read Beelzebub and nothing else. Or just like Gurdjieff's teachings, you just gotta self-remember. Don't be intellectual. Don't intellectualize. Trust me. And it's like, they are the convinced. They have convinced themselves, and something has crystallized, but it's immovable. And nothing can change it. It's like in alchemy, it's like an untransformable metal. They've become like a black kind of metal that can't like move forward or crystallize any further. And it's like, trust me, bro. It's the trust me, bro. It's like the Hasnamusian certainty. And it's like, this is why, and it's hard because you need a firm ground to stand on. You need to discern things and make judgments. But at the same, it's this perfect balance between you need to have an open mind, but not let your brain fall out. You need to have a view You need to have a horizon that's super broad and allow many doors to be open, but also have the discernment to close the doors that will lead you off the path. That's the like this balance that you need. And these people fail at a certain point and they close all doors except for one, their door. They have become the convinced. And because they are convinced, now they try to persuade you. That's this little thing that I don't know if anyone else can like, you know what I'm talking about? You see it in Christianity, you see it in Buddhism. Oh, at least I've seen it in other places. I swear to God, this is a thing. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's exactly what Gurdjieff's talking about, but this is like my mental mentation. This is like what it's associating and reminding me of. And it's hard because sometimes maybe like Wesley Sullivan says they don't speak from experience, they only learn from rote. That is a problem. So in Steiner schools, it's like you ask them questions. Oh yeah, well, Steiner says this. Oh, Steiner has the answer to that. Oh yeah, Steiner says, and it's like after a while you keep asking, and then eventually something clicks and you're just like, Steiner says this, Steiner says, what do you say? What do you, and you realize that is a problem. But there is a kind of a person that like, I don't know, it does seem to come from them, but at the same time, I don't know, it's a delusion. And that's where this interplay with the students comes from. That where the person who's deluded deludes themselves more by getting confirmation from their students who want to be deceived. God damn. Yeah. Wretched guardians, another guy. I love the references. Sounds like an old school priest who knows the Bible, God better than everyone. Yeah. That's a Hasnamusian trait there. This is why there's 50 different types of Christianity. Oh, there's more than 50, Kimberly. There's more than 50. Anyway, transformation of their psyche. And that's why I like to say, I always come back to that one line from William Blake, which I really liked, where William Blake says something like, I needed to create my own system or risk being enslaved by another man's system. And I was like, there's something based and Gnostic pilled in there. And I think there's something of that in this, what Gurdjieff has given us. Because it's like, you don't read Beelzebub's Tales and get it all in one go and that's it. It's like, you know, you read Beelzebub's Tales, you take what you get and you build what you can. No one's forcing you, you got to do it this way. That's the problem of a system. The good thing about a system is, because it's systemized, it's like a structure you can grow in. But a plant can only grow so much in an enclosed area. For it to reach its full potential, it can't be that way. And that's the thing about systems, is systems, if you're a little bit of nothing, a system can help you grow, but to a certain point, you eventually end up cutting yourself down to fit into the system. So there's a point where the system either has to be unfinished, incomplete, and it's deliberately left that way via the real masters who have understanding so that we ourselves can complete that missing octave. Whereas, and this is the other thing, this is the other Hasnamusian thing, the desire to complete the system. It's complete, trust me, I have the truth, I have it all there. You've just been taught wrong. I have the answers, and it's like, that's another Hasnamusian trait, to systematize everything. And it's like, I have the objective thing here, this objective practice. If something's objective practice that'll work for everybody, doubt, man. I have a serious doubt. It's like nothing can work for everybody. If you've taught anything, even if you're a parent and you have 2 kids, you know the problem. You know this problem. This problem is you have something that needs to get done. You have 10 people in front of you. You give them all the same instructions at the same time. 10 people go off, you come back and you get 10 different results. Teachers know this. Even parents who have 2 kids know this. Same instructions to each person, you get different results. That's just going to be the thing that happens. And when you extrapolate, and it's hard, in something physical, you can see the results. But in a place where things get spiritual and the results are ephemeral to begin with, this becomes very abstract. And it's like people who systematize and really want, it's like, you gotta, trust me, bro. It becomes dangerous. Jesus gave me clairvoyance for being a good boy. That's good. That's good, Dylan. What stops someone from creating their own system for themselves? The lack of and so that's the thing. You kind of have to submit to a system at first. Just don't get you got to leave it eventually. That's the problem. That's why I say, like I said in another point, it's like one skill to have in the work is to go into a place that you know is a little bit of a cult. To go into a place where you know the guy is a bit of a Hasnamusen, a bit of a jerk. But you have to have this talent to be like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Oh, there's this part of the doctrine I just don't quite understand. Can you, enlightened, teach me this part of the doctrine? I just need it illuminated by your intellect. And they're like, oh, why, thank you. And you feed their pride, and then they tell you the key, and you're like, oh, thank you for that key. And then you take it away, and you fucking leave. And now that you've gotten the knowledge that they had, you fucking leave, and you do what you need to do. Like, that is a skill to cultivate. And one of the best examples from that is, like, if you get that book, what's his name? Alan Richardson, who's a bit of a controversial author. Is this the guy? No. Oh my God. Crowley. Yeah, Alan Richardson. This book. Booktopia. If you ever read this book, it's a dual biography of Crowley and Dion Fortune. And at the back, there's some letters. And the book, the dual biography isn't to be like they're the same person. It's because they're complete opposites that make it an interesting contrast. Like white and black put next together, you kind of see, through contrast, you see, two faces or a vase or something. Through contrasting two completely different people, you see something. So it's an interesting book. And the thing about it is right at the end, you get some letters between Crowley and Dion Fortune. And Dion Fortune literally does that. She's just like, oh my God, your taro's amazing. Oh, you've got... can you illuminate this one bit that I didn't get because I'm just not smart enough? And you can see she's basically working him for esoteric knowledge because, who's Dion Fortune? Dion Fortune never left Britain. She had zero access to things outside of Britain. Aleister Crowley, trust fund baby, traveled the world. He literally went to India and China. So if you're like a British occultist and you know Crowley, you're gonna mine him for info. You gotta mine him for info. And at the same time, she kind of knew that he was a little bit sus. So she kind of had the intellect to bracket away the sus stuff, but then take what was valuable. That's a skill you gotta get. That's a skill you gotta get. Everyone has different paths for sure. Exactly. So there's the different paths, the mountain. We all go to ascend the mountain. There's an infinite amount of paths that eventually kind of start to, once you actually crystallize something, eventually, you become the balanced man. And the paths you start to see that there's something similar with the path of the person next to you, and you can kind of draw from them and gain a kind of little bit of help. And then you kind of, as you start to kind of go up to the apex, it's like man number 5, 6, 7, and then it's like the apex of the mountain, the paths start to become more and more similar, and then it becomes more and more helpful to kind of draw from kind of other places. It's like the story from the Changzu when the wheel maker couldn't explain how to make a wheel because he only understood how to make it through himself. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that story. But that's I got to check that up. Go to local cannibalistic cult to get the key. No, it's just from drawing from all kind of places. I mean, look, Blavatsky and Theosophy is going to have something. Rosicrucian schools and Freemason schools are going to have something. Neo-Gnostic schools, Hermetic paths, random schizo freak people on the internet. Everybody's read something and experienced something. Even Paracelsus claims that there's one point where the alchemist Paracelsus claims that everything he knows about gnomes and pygmies he got from miners. Because Paracelsus rejected academia and said you should learn from all places, even washerwomen. And so he would just go around and go to bars and get drunk and talk to people. And he basically claims that, miners not as in young people, but as in people who go into the mines. That miners and the stories that they would tell and the superstitions they would say about what you would do in mines to make sure there wouldn't be a mine collapse. He learnt everything he knows about gnomes and pygmies from the miners. So, another guy asks, even from the New Age, except for the New Age. Screw the New Age. New Age slop is worthless. The Random Hermit, you're my schizo guy on the internet. Thank you, Random Hermit. Now, let's keep talking about Hasnamusens. So Goethe said, unfortunately, his students raised up were basically had a Hasnamusian predispositions. a predisposition which appeared and became fully visible, clearly sensible to all more or less normal persons around them, which when at the moment of desperate crisis for everything I had previously actualized due to the said accident, they, as is said, quaking for their skins. That's an interesting little saying. That is to say, fearing to lose their personal welfare, which, by the way, I had created for them, deserted the common work, and with their tails between their legs took themselves off to their kennels, where profiting by the crumbs fallen from my, so to say, idea table, they opened their, as I would say, Shah Chermaka workshop booths. So basically they stole his teachings and then went and opened their own workshops for enlightenment. Bruh. Oh, so I'm just stretching my back. And with a secret feeling. So this is the New Age people. The New Age the reason why New Age slop is New Age slop isn't because there's nothing of value in it. Sure, there's stuff of value in the New Age slop, but the stuff in the New Age slop is just recycled. It's like, why is Deepak Chopra not bad? If you're honest and you look at Deepak Chopra, he does have value, but everything that he says that's of value is just recycled from the Vedas. Question: if what he says is valuable, then why don't you just go read the Vedas? That's the problem with New Age slop, is, yeah, I guess it's a good introductory or a kindergarten school if you really know nothing. But once you know something and you have a little bit of crystallization, go to the sources, bro, and just read the freaking sources. You know, oh, I read an intro book on Gurdjieff. Just read freaking Ouspensky and then dive into Beelzebub's Tales. It doesn't matter if you understand everything all at once. Just, that's the work, that's the struggle, bro. And with a secret feeling of hope, and perhaps even joy at their speedy and complete release from my vigilant control, began manufacturing out of various unfortunate naive people candidates for lunatic asylums. Yeah, exactly. Good introduction? Yeah. Sorry, you caught me there. I'm just trying to be nice. I don't want to close a door, like, completely. I always like to leave a door, like, slightly ajar. Like, I don't know, maybe someone knows nothing and they do one Reiki workshop and it doesn't illuminate them, but, like, they go, hey, maybe there is something more to life. And if they never did that gay Reiki workshop, then they would have never gone to the next thing and then the next thing and the next thing, and then someone would have mentioned Franz Baden, and there's like, who's that? And they read Initiation into Hermetics and get into the online occult school, and then they learn, like, what's all this Golden Dawn stuff? And they actually join a Golden Dawn temple, and then, like, have a falling out, but then because of that, they find an author that then leads them to a certain place, and then they find their path, and then, you know, I don't want to, like, close the door entirely. I'll always leave a door open for potentially, by the law of accidents, the New Age schlop can be a good intro. You know what I mean, another guy? You know what I mean? It's Toxic's level of cringe, says Kimberly. Exactly, Kimberly. Now, I append just this particular lecture in the first place because at the very beginning of the dissemination of the ideas I imported into life, it especially prepared here on the continent of Europe to serve as the introduction, or, as it were, threshold for the whole series of subsequent lectures, by no less than the whole sum of which was it possible, both to make clear in a form accessible to everybody, the necessity and even the inevitability of a practical actualization of the immutable truths I have elucidated and established in the course of half a century of day and night active work, and also Kid Cudi, day and night. Gurdjieff predicted Kid Cudi. Confirmed. Active work, and also to prove the actual possibility of employing those truths for the welfare of people. And secondly, I append it here because while it was last being publicly read, and I happened myself to be present at that numerous gathering, I made an addition which fully corresponds to the hidden thought introduced by Mr. Beelzebub himself into his, so to say, concluding chord. And which at the same time illuminating, once more, this most great objective truth, will, in my opinion, make it possible for the reader properly to perceive and assimilate this truth as befits a being who claims to be an image of God. Very interesting. Lecture number 1. The variety, according to lore, of the manifestations of human individuality. Last read in New York, in the neighborhood playhouse. I bet it's a playhouse, you dirty boy. January 1924. Bro, that's oh my god, that's over 100 years ago. Dog. We're so old. We are so old. Someone could have been in this lecture, died, and reincarnated and be in this live stream right now, bro. That's crazy. According to the investigations of many scientists of past ages, according to the data contained at the present time, by means of the quite exceptionally conducted researches of the Institute of the Harmonious Development of Man according to the system of Mr. Gurdjieff. Is this a real lecture or is he just joshing us? The whole individuality of every man according to the laws and conditions of the process of life of people which have from the very beginning become established and gradually fixed on the earth, of whatever heredity he is the result, and whatever be the accidental surrounding conditions in which he arose and developed, must already at the beginning of his responsible life, as a condition of responding in reality to the sense and predestination of his existence as a man and not merely as an animal, indispensably consist of 4 distinct personalities. So that entire paragraph is... Gurdjieff said that there are 4 different personalities in humans. The first of these 4 independent personalities... What's everyone talking about in chat? Having some hippie do a kundalini working on you? What's going on? The first of these 4 independent personalities is nothing else than the totality of that automatic functioning, which is proper to man as well as to all animals. So is he talking about just man number 1, 2, 3, and 4? Is this what he's going to talk about? The data for which are composed in them firstly of the sum total of the results of impressions previously perceived from all the surrounding reality, as well as from everything intentionally artificially implanted in them from the outside, and secondly from the result of the process also inherent in every animal called daydreaming. And this totality of automatic functioning most people ignorantly name consciousness, or at best mentation. Hello, electrogravitic, welcome. The second of the 4 personalities. So the first one is just someone who's just daydreaming all the time. They're just pre-automatic, they're reactionary. They have false consciousness, as the Marxists would say. The second of the 4 personalities, functioning, in most cases, independently of the first, consists of the sum of the results of the data deposited and fixed in the presence of man like that of all animals, through its 6 organs called receivers of the varied qualitated vibrations. Okay, hold on. Like all animals, through the 6 organs called the receivers, which organs function in accordance with newly perceived impressions, and the sensitiveness of which depends upon transmitted heredity and on the conditions of the preparatory formation of the given individual for responsible existence. So preparatory formation is education. So the second type of person is someone who is also created automatically, but due to their education, they have some knowledge in them that's not completely retarded. So I guess if you're an Aussie, first person would be a dumb cunt, and then the next person would be someone who's not a total dumb cunt. So what's the third gonna be? It's 4 layered processes. Okay. Montecoli, 1909. Are you 100 years old, bro? So it's not 4 different types, it's 4 layered processes. That's interesting. Neo-Stoicism, the average qualia experiencer. That's actually great. Average qualia experiencer. I love that. It's the NPC is normal person consciousness, and then the like enlightened individual is the AQE, the average qualia experiencer. That's great. That is great. Fantastic. So now third type of person. What's the third person? The third layer, the independent part of the whole being, is the prime functioning of his organism, as well as what are called the motor reflex reciprocally affecting manifestations proceeding in it. And the quality of these manifestations also depends on those aforesaid results of hereditary and the circumstances of the preparatory formula. Okay, so wait, what's the third thing? So first is just automated, second is automated with then education from society, and then the third has prime functioning of the organism, as well as what are called the motor reflex reciprocally affecting manifestations proceeding in it. What? The quality of these manifestations. So what's different? Motor reflex reciprocally affecting. That just seems like instinct. Motor reflex reciprocally affecting manifestations proceeding into it. Intuition? Manifestations proceeding into it. So when an impression comes, your motor reflex reciprocally... So your manifestations... G is making my brain hurt again. He's making my brain hurt again. This is... Well, what's the third type? The third type has something automated in it. He says motor, but is it supposed to be something that's not actually mechanical? It's something that is actually individualized. Maybe it's something that is mechanical, but it is something that's properly individualized. So, you know, like that test that they do on like uni students where they get like lines on a board and there's like one line is lower than the others, and they say, what's the highest line? And for line C, which is lowest, everyone puts their hand up for line C, but everyone's an actor except for one guy, but the one guy looks at everyone else and is like, oh, and just via peer pressure caves in. It's like the person who doesn't cave into peer pressure is the third type of person. I'm just riffing here. This is my speculation. What the hell is this third layer? Sounds like a muscle that can be fixed as impressions come in. Yeah, well, let's go on and see what the fourth type is, and maybe from the fourth type we can then understand what the third type is in between the fourth and the second. And the fourth, which should also be a separate part of the whole individual, is none other than the manifestation of the totality of the results of the already automatized functioning of the 3 enumerated personalities, separately formed and independently educated in him. That is to say, it is that part which is called in a being I. That's interesting. So the fourth type, which also a separate part of the whole, okay, is none other than the manifestation of the totality of the results of the already automatized functioning of the 3 enumerated personalities. That's the key. That's the key. Separately formed and independently educated in him. So hold on. Organizing and so Montecoli in the chat says organizing the organism and the motor reflex reciprocally affecting manifestations proceeding in it. The body, maybe it just means the body and how it interacts back and forth with impressions. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Here in the fourth type, we've got the 3 enumerated personalities. What is this? This is someone who is unbalanced. And so each of their centers, intellect, emotion, and motor, has a different personality. Formed and independently educated in him, that is to say, and so, but in the fourth individual, it is where the three personalities, which should also be separate parts of the whole individual, is none other than the manifestation. But it can work as a totality, is a manifestation of the totality. The fourth type is none other than the manifestation of the totality of the results of the automatized functioning of the thing. Okay, so it's someone who says they have an I, but they're actually, the totality of their functioning is actually this schizophrenic action of three different personalities that have crystallized within them. This person doesn't have multiple personalities, but that's a bad thing because it's like undeveloped. Two cylinders, or at least one, is undeveloped, and he's only got one. I'm just speculating. What he's saying is that there's one cylinder that's developed, and in this person it's like there's one cylinder that's not even developed, but they just react from it, and this person is just a complete dumb cunt. Maybe that's where he's going. So here in the fourth type of person, it's someone who has education in all three parts, but there's imbalance. And even though there's imbalance, they still plaster over like a persona, and it's like, yeah, this is me, bro. Maybe that's where he's going. This is my speculation. This is how I'm organizing it in my mind. So the personalities are the cylinders. No, the cylinders are the cylinders. It's if you act via a cylinder, only via one cylinder, it's kind of like you have if you act only via your intellectual cylinder and you try to solve all of your problems via your intellectual cylinder, what happens? You get a persona that's just the intellectual, the redditor. You can do your taxes, but can you reconcile a bad relationship? Honey, those are just the facts. And it's like, then she slaps you on the face and leaves, and it's like, what? But it's like the emotional person who solves everything with their emotional cylinder gains an emotional persona. And it's like they can, relate to people, but they can't do their taxes. Instead, they burst into tears and they manipulate someone into doing their taxes for them. The motor cylinder, you do everything via your motor cylinder. You solve things with your motor cylinder. You know what I'm saying? You solve relationships with your motor cylinder. There is a type of person that can educate all of their cylinders, but it's not and it kind of assembles behind an I. That's what he's getting at. But it's not the fourth type of person, the balanced person. There's still imbalance there. Monteculi. How do you pronounce your name? It's Monteculi. 1909. The ego is basically the projection or hologram of the products of the three personalities. Hey, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. We'll go with that. Now, in the common presence of man, and for the spiritualization and manifestation of each of the enumerated three separately formed parts of his entire whole, there is an independent, what is called gravity center localization. Ooh, so this is where Ouspensky's really went hard into the center of gravity. And each of these gravity center localizations, each with its own entire system, has for its general actualization its own peculiarities and predispositions. Yeah. So the motor cylinder will do things differently from the intellectual cylinder. The motor cylinder has a different speed to the intellectual cylinder. The emotional cylinder has a different speed to the intellectual and the motor cylinder. Like your intellectual cylinder is actually quite slow. Your motor cylinder is fast. That's why, sometimes, it doesn't happen nowadays because everyone has a car beeper, but remember when you had to lock your car in the 90s? And sometimes you'd leave your keys in your car and you'd start closing your door and you'd be like, oh, I'm locking my keys in my car. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. And it's like, intellectually, you'll see that you're locking your keys in your car, but the motor function is already going through the process. It's too fast. It's faster than your intellectual cylinder. And so you lock your keys in your car and you're like, oh God. It's because you're out of balance. They're functioning out of sync. There's different personalities in you. And why? Because they're different speeds. They have different peculiarities. But if you can kind of sync everything up, then you can be a man number 4. Montecuccoli is the closest English speaking I can think of. Nice. There was a study observing the action that action that happened before the thought of acting is consciously processed. Okay. Yes. Oh, Ignoramus. Hello again. Hello again, Ignoramus. You're coming in towards the end of the stream. We're getting close to the end here. Maybe I should cut off somewhere. Predispositions inherent in it alone. In consequence of this, in order to make possible the rounded perfecting of a man, a special corresponding correct education is indispensably necessary for each of these three parts. So education isn't just an education of the mind. It's not just going to the school and going through the Prussian system. A true education educates man on all three sides. Hence why Plato said, a true man, does wrestling or sport. Plato was a fan of wrestling, music, and philosophy. That's like wrestling for the body or sport for the body. You got to do a sport, music, and then philosophy for the mind. Music for the emotions, philosophy for the mind. That's true education, to develop a human. It needs to be developed on all three parts. These three parts are not such a treatment as is given nowadays, and also called edumacation. Only then can the eye, which should be in a man, be his own eye. That is a profound sentence right there. That is a profound profundity, which we should ponder for a second. Only then can the eye, which should be in man, be his own eye. It's almost like people build the false eye layered over themselves, but you got to kind of go back deep into the functioning and then kind of realize the thing that's behind the functioning, and that's where the real eye is. But they don't even realize that there's functioning there and it's all kind of not working. And it's this thing that then coats over the functioning, the false personality. That's the normal person's eye that they don't really own. You got to get to that midnight sun, baby. The sun that never sets. Sol Invictus, the invincible sun. Let's do it all. Now, that's actually a pretty sexy place to stop. How can the false eye fight back? I mean, sure. I mean, when you realize what's false and what's not, what is the eye? What is the false eye? What I call that false eye, that's not the functioning, it's the thing plastered over the functioning. That false eye is just a bunch of values. Once you realize that, you begin the process of transvaluation, of changing your being tempo step by step by step, and that involves, working with the functioning. Changing the functioning, struggling against the mechanical functioning. And that really all of that prepares the thing behind the real eye to kind of come in. You know what I'm saying? That's the work, baby. I would agree after my dark night of gnosis experience. You live the fool at that moment. Sexy, says Tyler. The machine, indeed. I feel like there are a billion I in me. That's good. That's good, Kimberly. Because those are all the kind of the fake things. The multiplicity is fake. You know why? I like what one guy said once. He said, you know why masters can sit in silence and meditation? Because they're one thing. They're the silence. Whereas us, we're multiple things. We're thinking about the past. We're thinking about the future. We're desiring our dinner. We haven't had breakfast and we're thinking about breakfast that we ate 3 days ago. We're a multiplicity. Whereas a master is a unity, a one thing. You got to struggle against those actions. Struggle against life. Struggle to do the dishes. Doing the dishes is the most esoteric struggle in the world. How many pages do we have left? We're on, 1378. Bow, bow, chicka, wow, wow. God damn, it's so long. It's so big. Good Lord. I'm gonna... Tyler, I'm the most esoteric master then. Master of dish... Washing the dishes is great, though. Especially when it's cold, and everyone's like, oh, I don't want to wash the dishes, and then it's like, instead of... You can just, turn the warm water and wash the dishes. It's great, bro. It's great. That's a life hack there. God damn. Oh, it's over 50 pages. Okay, we're going to do this in a lot of parts then. We're going to do this in a lot of parts. 48 pages left. Yeah, there's a lot of pages. Oof. Oh, you just finished doing the dishes and open stream? Well, we're just ending the stream, unfortunately. Well, yeah, 3 pages were read because we're just taking this nice and slow. And we're just gonna rant and go off on tangents and have fun, guys. Have fun. But I think that's all today. All today. I'm gonna call it there. Thank you all for coming. These are the final moments we have with Gurdjieff and Beelzebub's Tales. I'll see y'all next week. Thank you for tuning in and hanging out, everybody. We'll come together next week and we'll continue hearing what Gurdjieff has to say in his afterword. We'll continue seeing what Gurdjieff has to say to his grandchildren. Maybe we'll figure out which eye is finally us. Till then, cheerio. Mwah.